And welcome back to the home of the freestyled story. We're going to jump right on in using the online random word generator again and get some words. And our words for this week is volatile, windy, elastic, dapper, and test. So let's see what we can turn this into. Sometimes you gotta show them, sometimes you gotta fold them. Opium words. The tension in the air was palpable. There was a total of 5 people around the table, one including the dealer. They were all sitting there in complete silence, staring at each other and watching each movement. There were 3 cards already pulled out. The name of the game? Texas Hold'em. Each player had their 2 cards already, 3 cards already on the table. Dealer's getting ready to do the 4th. While there are a lot of different poker games and a lot of different places that these games take place, this one was a bit different. This one was an underground yet high-yielding game. Millions could be traded at the blink of an eye. One hand, and you could go in debt for practically the rest of your life. But that was the thrill in it all. And the place that this was, it wasn't a rinky-dinky, torn-down building that was desolate or in someone's basement where people can't find you. It was in the penthouse suite of a 35-story tall building. What a nice view. It made great scenery as the night fell. And everyone inside, they were dressed to T. They all looked very prestigious and might I even say dapper. But the most dapper of them all was sitting at the table now. He had on a nice tailored 3-piece maroon suit with cufflinks that were engraved with dollar signs, meaning he was here to play and only to win. At this particular game that they normally set up, no one went by their real names. If you wanted to disclose that to someone later or in any time outside of this floor, that was fine, but it was prohibited inside the room. So our Mr. Dapper himself went by Fox. And along with Fox at the table, there was Cat, Mouse, and Steven. While Steven was not his real name, because it was prohibited, he did make a fuss before about how the amount of money that he brings into this particular game that they do regularly, he shouldn't have to go by some lowly animal name. And everyone knew he was a big roller, a big spender, and a big contributor, so Steven was always at the table and his name was always Steven, until outside the room, that is. And now as they look at their hands and the cards are being drawn, the dealer pulls out the 4th card. It's an ace of diamonds. So far, the hand has been fairly mixed. There's a 2 of spades, now the ace of diamonds, the jack of clubs, and a 2 of hearts. So there's a pair already on the field. Technically, that can help somebody out a lot, or that could be someone else's downfall. But now that the 4th card was played, they all looked around at each other, looking to see if you can tell, was someone's hand good? Was someone's hand bad? Looking at all the micro movement and aggressions. They sat there staring at each other, looking at their hands. Now it was time. Are you gonna bet or are you gonna call? Of course, Steven bet. He doubled his bet. $2 million in the pot. This hand was getting big. And Mouse decided she will keep up with the games. So of course, she bet as well. Now on the other hand, Cat seemed to be a bit spooked. She had this elastic rubber band around her wrist that she kept popping. The elastic just kept flinging and snapping next to her wrist over and over again as she stared at her hand. The dealer got a bit impatient and knocked at her to remind her it's time for her bet. She stopped snapping her elastic for a moment to slide her money in as well. And it was odd because no one could ever understand if this elastic was a part of her tail. It seemed like sometimes she had a good hand when she snapped it, and other times she had a bad hand when she snapped it. So it might have just been a nervous thing. But she did snap it often, and maybe that was the key to being able to beat her, figuring out how and when she snapped her elastic. But this was the first time that she's ever been at this table, and seeing all this already, who knows what this could have meant. Fox, without hesitation, then slid in chips worth $4 million. He decided to raise. And as things were starting to get interesting and there was a few people around drawing the crowd, the betting continued until, that is, a gust of wind came streaming through the room. Now, this is rather odd because on the floor that they're on, there's no possible way that someone would be able to open a window. So where possibly could this wind came in? And as the gust seemed to flow around the room more, it grew more windy, even starting to lift up and move some of the cards that were both in the dealer's deck and that was on the table. Even some of the players' cards got pushed around, and now everyone grew suspicious. Looking around, they noticed finally that the automatic sky window that was simply able to be used with the remote was opened. Now, scanning the room quickly, there was a woman holding the remote ever so innocently, saying that she didn't think that it would get so windy inside. Stephen had enough. You can tell that the stress from the game was already getting to him, but now this is absurd. How could she possibly ruin their game? He stood up at his seat, slamming his hands down. You can tell he was becoming very anxious. He started to yell at her and yell at everyone in the room, asking what kind of mockery are they doing here and who's in charge, which of course he knew, but at a moment like this, it felt like the right thing to say. He was getting so angry, he picked up some of the chips and he threw them at her. He was volatile now at this point and no one knew how to calm him down. So simply, our Dapper Fox said, well, it's okay, why don't we just take that as a test run and we can continue on about what we're doing. It's not hard to play out a new hand. Stephen immediately turned to Fox. It was you. You're the one who brought her here, right? So you're the one who set this whole thing up? What is it when you started to lose? He was growing angrier and angrier by the second. And Fox just sat back. He fixed his coat, making sure he looked quite proper sitting there. Of course it wasn't me. Why would I do such a thing? I had a winning hand. I was going to take you for everything you were worth right then and there. You should be happy. Now you might actually have a chance if we just act like that was a test round. But that's up to you. If you want to keep being so hostile and volatile and throwing your chips around, then hey, then we can just stop here. After huffing and puffing, Stephen sat back down. He said he ruffled himself and he shook his head a bit and said it was fine. They can act as if that was a test round and they can go on about the game. The dealer then gathered up the cards and agreed with everyone if that was fine. There were no objections. So the dealer started to reshuffle all the cards in the deck. During that time, Stephen got up and tried to go around and collect the chips that he threw when he was in his manic state. But Fox got up right along with him and told him it was his fault for throwing the chips in the first place. It's not his money anymore. Just like at a strip club, you throw money, it's no longer yours. Steven didn't like what he was saying, but he also knew it was best to save face. It was merely a few thousand that he threw out, so it wasn't going to be much, but you can tell in his eyes that he was furious. After them sitting back down at the table, the dealer continued to shuffle the decks and then started to pass out the cards. The girl who initially opened the sky window came over to Fox. She apologized to him and the rest of the table. She tells Fox that she didn't mean to embarrass him or get him into any trouble. She just thought it was going to open up to show the moon, not open up completely and let in wind. Everyone at the table was staring at her in disbelief. They felt like she seemed genuinely stupid, so they didn't really call into too much problems. They accepted her apology and continued about their business, looking at their hands and seeing what the dealer had to deal. After the initial 3 cards the dealer dealt were down, the bets started to roll in. 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, they were stacking up fast. Everyone was in the zone, and it seemed like no one was willing to back down. Now, it wasn't clear if the tension that now has risen was because of the incident with the previous, now considered test game, or if it was because the person who ruined their game was now hovering over them, or if it was just the tension from a normal high-stakes poker game. But nonetheless, everyone was very antsy. You can see them all at the edge of their seats. And of course, Kat was flicking her elastic band on her wrist again. But it didn't seem to deter anyone. The mood kept on while the game kept going. The next card was flips, and now with the 4 cards that were laid out by the dealer, it was starting to get real close to the end. This was the last game of the night, and Fox seemed completely calm and collected. He felt that all eyes were on him, seeing that he came with the woman who was just ruining their whole game. But he didn't mind. He wasn't the type that would fold under pressure or bend to anybody else's will just because they felt some type of way about any of his actions. He looked really composed. That might have been his way of intimidating people. He had no tells to show that his hand was good or bad, but the fact that the previous hand was ruined and now he seemed just a bit more joyous was a big factor. Mouse, she called. She bowed out. It was too much pressure for her. But the game must go on. The bets continued, the stakes got higher, and Steven couldn't take it anymore. He shouted at Fox again. You guys must be into it together. There's no possible way that she opened the window and then now she's sitting here next to you all calm and composed and you look even more joyful. Did you rig the game? Have you always rigged the games? Is this your way of making money by cheating? Things started to get pretty heated as they continued to go back and forth. Steven continued to accuse him of rigging the game or doing things that were quite unsavory, while Fox barely answered his questions, but yet said many times that of course he wouldn't, and he wouldn't need to cheat in order to beat any of them at the table. If anything, he just always seemed to have luck on his side. Once he made the comment about luck, all eyes were on him and they were staring daggers. It was almost as if that was some telltale sign that this was his doing in the first place. He laughed it off and said, "Wow, you don't think that this is Lady Luck, do ya?" As he pointed to his companion that came with him. "She's not Lady Luck. It's clearly a figure of speech." You guys all must know this. For some reason, the tension didn't seem to lower at all. It just felt more and more thick. It could be cut with a knife. But he just simply told them to continue on about the game and to play. It's not that hard. So that's what he did. He continued to raise his bet till it was time for the dealer to draw the final card. And the dealer flipped the card. A big grin grew on Steven's face. The grin told a story that was way too obvious to conceal. You can tell that Steven knew in his heart that he won the game. But he wasn't the only one that seemed to change their demeanor a bit after this last card was drawn. Kat was no longer flicking her elastic band. She sat there and just looked at the deck. Now, if this was a good tell or a bad tell, one's to know, but nonetheless, it was something that was different about her. It might have just been her becoming comfortable with the situation. And now with the cards drawn on the table, it was time for the final bets and to figure out who won. So the 5 cards that the dealer had drawn were the King of Spades, the 3 of Clubs, the 5 of Clubs, the King of Hearts, and the 6 of Clubs. Steven knew that he was going to win, and he decided to bet again. He decided to go all in. He clearly had the confidence that he had this in the bag, and his face showed it very well that he knew that this was it for him. He was going to win. Kat, however, no longer snapping her elastic band, seemed as if she did not feel the same, because she decided to fold. She flipped over her cards to reveal that she had a Queen of Clubs and a 9 of Hearts. Nothing to do with this hand. So now it was all down to our Dapper fox friend. He fixed himself and decided to also go all in. He didn't look as confident as someone who was putting his all in, but at the same time, who would bluff at this stage? Steven seemed unfazed. He flipped over his cards to reveal the King of Clubs and the King of Diamonds. He had 4 of a kind. Clearly, he knew that he won. He slammed his hand on the table as he flipped those cards over in excitement. He started to reach for the pot, of course, declaring himself the winner, when Fox told him not so fast. He merely flipped over his cards in such a calm manner that no one thought that he actually would have won. Where was the excitement? But in fact, he did. He had a 4 of clubs and a 7 of clubs, giving him a straight flush. One of the few things that could actually beat the 4 of a kind. Steven went volatile again. He knocked over some of the chips and demanded that he must have cheated somehow again. There was no way possible that he could have had a better hand than him. He had a 4 of a kind. But of course, the dealer reassured him that there was no cheating that happened on his end, and nothing was stacked against him. So, that simply meant he lost. And he made sure to hand over all the money to the Dapper Fox. As they all started to get up and leave from this high-stakes poker night extravaganza, there was a weird moment where Steven and the woman who opened the sunroof locked eyes. And it wasn't a moment of tension or anger. It simply felt like a moment of sadness. It was almost as if he was the one who cheated initially, but the real winner, the fox, came out on top. And that's it for this week's story. If it wasn't kind of clear, Poker is not necessarily my thing. I've dabbled, know a little bit, but I probably definitely had some wrong terminology in there and stuff. But the point is to get the story across. If I had, like, I guess some more prep time and it wasn't so impromptu, maybe we can try that again. But hope you enjoyed, and be sure to come back next time for a brand new story with brand new set of words.